My name is Peter Purcell. I'm a director at Eaton Partners. Eaton Partners is one of the world's largest placement agents. We raise capital for private equity fund managers, private credit funds, real asset funds, real estate funds, hedge funds, and we raise that capital from institutional investors, so pensions, endowments, foundations, family offices, and other like-minded investors.
My name is Jennifer Gray. I'm a litigation partner at LeClair Ryan. LeClair Ryan is a national law firm, primarily litigation. Well, I should say full service, but many of us are litigation. We have about 25 offices around the country.
Hi, this is Bill Yuen. I'm co-founder and CEO of Brickell Key Asset Management. Brickell Key Asset Management is a registered investment advisor. We manage money for institutional investors focused on investing and financing commercial claims.
Tiffany Walls-Fox for Liberty Mutual Group. Liberty Mutual Group is the fourth largest property and casualty insurance company in America.
Lena Bacani, I'm the litigation chair for Loza & Loza, and we're a national firm with about 35 attorneys right now, an intellectual property boutique, and I head the litigation department.
Charlie Brown, Pravati Capital, Director of Business Development and Marketing. We are a litigation funder.
Morbraith Salapur, founder of Salapur Legal Consulting. I provide business and intellectual property advice to startups, entrepreneurs, and businesses.
I'm meeting other funders, which is great because some of the deals we won't do, they'll do. Developing partnerships, also learning from the industry, about the industry from them. I'm meeting in-house counsel. I'm meeting people at all levels of like you said, the 4 levels of litigation finance, meeting somebody at every level, except the recipients.
I met some wonderful attorneys who are in similar situation to me. Some of them are already using litigation funding. Some of them are just trying to find out about it. This was a really good opportunity for us to learn more about the industry. And I also met some really great people who are actually involved in litigation funding, and I got to meet them on a personal level, interact with them, find out what they're looking for their cases, and it was really beneficial.
We've met funders, competitors, law firms, individual lawyers, and some other service providers.
I've met people from all aspects of litigation funding. I've met litigation funders, I've met other attorneys, potential clients. I think we met a broker. I just met somebody who runs an investment advisory business, who represents investors, private investors, who uses his company to evaluate and find securities litigation investments. Everyone's had a different perspective. It's been fabulous.
We met funders, attorneys, different types of attorneys, from patent law to securities attorneys, as well as class action attorneys and IP attorneys, and different funding providers in various industries, including construction and commercial litigation.
It was great to meet other attorneys working in the field, as well as some people working on the funding side, and to see what the considerations are for the different sides of the equation and what kind of cases make sense to consider funding for.
Attorneys, and it was funding firms, in various forms, I would say.
I think the first presenter who's talking about the growth of the industry relative to England, Europe, and Australia, and kind of where the United States is in that. I knew it was growing, but those statistics were really enlightening.
There were a couple of moments that made me go, wow. One was the litigation funding panel that was right after lunch. I had never seen all these litigation funders together. They were talking about what they look for, and there was a really good energy, and there was also a lot of questions answered, questions that the audience, which was a lot of lawyers, had about the litigation funding industry that maybe we were afraid to ask. So the funding panel, they all kind of talked and fed off each other and explained in a lot of detail, much more detail than you would get maybe even in just on a one-on-one conversation, talking about the industry and the growth in the industry the last few years. I found that really helpful, and I learned a lot.
I'd say talking to the gentleman, the next speaker, who does the private advisory work for his clients, and he really shops out different litigations to find the best funder. And he was talking about how competitive the market is right now, that they're really in the buyer's seat here, and they're able to really negotiate down with funders pretty dramatically. So I think there's a lot more competition than I was aware of. That was sort of a wow moment. Just talking to some folks about how they're modeling the litigation risk and some of the algorithms and tools that they have. I mean, that's fascinating. And also just how big this market is outside of the US. I mean, we're really behind Australia and England and some of these other countries. So I was surprised about that, which I think is interesting because I think the market will grow here that much more quickly because there are all these other models around the world. So it's exciting. It's a really exciting time to get involved.
I was just really impressed in regards to the amount of litigation funding that's available and the different avenues that people are using litigation funding for them to be able to afford to litigate their actions so that plaintiffs will actually have the opportunity to pursue their cases when otherwise they might not have the ability to.
It was great to meet some of the people here and see, learn about their practices and how they've got where they are now and the different paths people take.
Yeah, I think the speed dating thing was interesting, so I already talked about it, yeah.
I loved the last panel discussion before the lunch break, and you asked them, what do you want from a funder? You had the attorney panel, and I took notes on the exact things that they want more from us. And so that, as in terms of business development marketing, that's really my to-do list. And so I thought that was super helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just met some great funders who handle claims around the size that match up with the cases that I have. So that's very helpful. And just got some terrific ideas about who's in the market, what kind of claims funders are interested in, and how to go about choosing good funders for particular cases.
I've met a few vendors and competitors that we exchange ideas. I thought that was useful.
So some helpful tips that I actually got in a case that I have right now is in terms of the discovery process and how you can obtain some of these documents related to litigation funding from the plaintiff's side that might assist with a settlement and negotiations, as well as it got me thinking about how I might be able to pitch litigation funding to an insurance company when we're looking at a case that might have substantially larger damages than anticipated from the beginning.
Yeah, a couple of ideas from this conference that we're going to implement. Some of them for me, but some of them for my clients. There was one gentleman, Lee Vandevoort, I think his name is, and he does litigation funding for the construction industry, very industry specific, and he gets involved in the whole dispute process very early. That's something I can pass along to some of my clients, especially those that are not able to have us litigate or who are looking for resolution of matters that may be too small for the firm to get involved in. Those are kind of things, some ideas I hadn't thought of before today.
It was great to learn that it wasn't just limited to bigger class action type cases or class action opt-outs, and it was more individual commercial disputes that could be funded as well.
I thought it was very informative and really gave me a solid background in what litigation funding is. It gave me some different perspectives and how I might be able to use litigation funding in the future and how to deal with some claims and lawsuits that I have now where the plaintiff side has litigation funding and how I can affect my discovery process and use that in terms of how to defend my claim.
The event's been awesome. Great networking, great knowledge exchange, great kind of insights of what's going on in the industry in general. So I appreciated everybody, all the speakers so far. Been very enlightening.
I find it very intimate and useful. Unlike other larger conferences I've attended, you get more one-on-one participations.
First time at the litigation conference. To be honest, I've been hearing about litigation funding for the last few years. Very interested in it, but I thought it was I wasn't sure how legitimate it was. Most of my work in the past has been for defense, litigation defense, and only recently have I started doing a lot more plaintiff work, and some of our clients are looking into litigation funding. So I came here not knowing what to expect and just trying to get an idea of what it's all about and what makes a legitimate company, what kind of legitimate companies are out there and what they're looking for and what kind of partnership we can reach with them in terms of helping the clients to reach their goals and also allow the lawyers to do our jobs. And a lot of times the litigation funding is a huge issue. Even if you have very meritorious claims, the client can't afford to take them all the way. And so litigation funding is a great a tool, I think, that might be in our toolbox going forward to allow clients to bridge that gap.
I really enjoyed interacting with the attorneys and a number of funders and talking about different strategies within the space. I spoke about raising capital in the space and kind of educating the investors or the LP base about this asset class and what there is to like about it. What are some of the concerns around it, and how you diligence a team in the space.
Got some contacts that I'm going to be following up with right after the conference. I've got you had very industry-specific litigation funders here that are in some of the industries my clients are in, and some active litigations we have now. So I'm going to follow up with them immediately. And I also met some litigation funders who are interested in patent litigation funding, and so that's something that Loza & Loza we do a lot of. And so I'm going to be following up with them after the conference. It's great.
No deals today, but we'll see what happens in the future.
I hope so. Met some great people, met some great attorneys. Certainly, as I was giving my business card out, some of the attorneys took notes on the kind of things that we can fund, especially the intellectual property that we're able to do. They were like, oh, you're able to do that, we're going to be in touch. So, no handshakes yet, nothing closed, but certainly some great connections for the future.
We've met some interesting folks. Hopefully that will develop into potential transactions or future relationships.
No, I'm mostly on the defense side, so it's still a nascent industry, defense side funding, and I've talked to a lot of people about that. I think it's a little harder to model defense side litigation funding, but definitely I'm in touch with the right folks who are tracking it and trying to work with the defense side to make litigation finance feasible.
I did not, but I made some good contacts.
It was. It's a fairly small group in LA because I think it's just the folks here who are involved in it. And so I've really gotten to talk to everyone, meet everybody here. A lot of times you go to conferences, they're so big, you can never find the people you really would be most interested in talking to. There's too many people, but this was a perfect size to get to know everyone who's here, talk to everyone, really understand what their businesses are, and really make connections.
Yes, I found the event very useful. Again, as I mentioned before, what's unique about this event is the intimate nature of it, the exposure you have with all the participants.
It's a great way to meet a number of people very quickly and kind of get to know each other. You can find out pretty quickly whether or not there's something that you'd like to discuss with that person, if there's something you can work on together in the future. So that was helpful.
The speed networking was great. I had never done that before. Never speed dated because I've been married a long time. So that was unusual and new for me, but I found it very effective. I thought it was great. I met a lot of attorneys and litigation funding professionals in a very short period of time. And it was just enough time to really get a chance to figure out what you wanted to follow up with in a future conversation, and I found that extremely effective. I'm going to be following up with several of those people in the future.
I actually really like the speed networking aspect of it because in just a few minutes we're able to learn what the other party was doing, kind of their purpose for coming to the event, and a little bit of their backstory, so that if today we're not able to do any business or help each other out, perhaps we'll be able to do that in the beginning. And it really facilitated some quick one-to-one interaction that give you the opportunity to meet everyone here, versus if you're let's say you have 30 minutes to do networking, and you might not be able to touch upon everyone in the room because they might spend 5 minutes with this person, 20 minutes with that person. This gives you an opportunity to meet just about everyone that was here, so that you can continue the conversation later if you weren't able to discuss everything you wanted to during those sessions.
Personally, I've never done speed dating, but the concept is basically Mark puts you through a table and you rotate, you meet different lawyers and funders, service provider. You get a quick interaction. You make sure you meet everybody in the conference. I thought that was very interesting.
So initially I'm like, do we have to do the speed networking? But it was great because that's how we really got to talk to everybody, and I wouldn't have known what everyone does, and it's not obvious from their title or from their firm. So I think that was great. Initially you're like, can I just sit here and check my email? But I think so far it's been the best part of the conference.
Anyone else who deals with basically commercial clients and commercial disputes, it may be something that will be helpful to them to kind of learn about the funding landscape and the ability to actually be able to help their clients do more of the cases where they may not have the budget to work on.
I think this conference is highly recommended to lawyers, especially law firms who are not familiar with litigation funding, as well as service providers potentially.
I would recommend this event to any litigators. I'm going to recommend it to some of the litigation folks I know who have maybe some plaintiffs' work that they need funded, especially for litigators who are working with startups or smaller companies that maybe can't afford to fund things completely in-house. Also, some of the litigation folks I know who work on larger matters, who have large institutional clients that may be concerned about cash flow, I think they would benefit from meeting some of the litigation funders here at this conference because they're top-notch.
I'd recommend it to other attorneys, funding firms, perhaps brokers in the space.
I would actually, interestingly enough, recommend it to some of the plaintiffs' attorneys that I know, who I've built a nice rapport with over the years, because I know back when I used to do civil rights litigation, we might have a case that sounded really great on paper, but if it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring this case, might not be a case that we'd be willing to take on because that's money out of your pocket, and it's not really a contingency case because there's never really a guarantee. But if knowing that you have the litigation funding and they're kind of taking that risk with you, so that way you're not spending anything necessarily out of your pocket, but at least if you recoup it in the end, you're able to represent your client and hopefully get a result that works for everyone.
I would recommend this event to lawyers, definitely. I think a lot of lawyers don't know that much yet about litigation finance, especially I think certainly on the defense side, but the larger firms. I would definitely recommend to funders, of course. There's going to be lawyers here you want to connect with and intermediaries. And I'd actually recommend it to general counsel and in-house counsel too, because I'm not sure that they know this is an option out there, and they ultimately are going to make the decision about how to fund litigation.
I'd recommend this event to every attorney out there who's unaware of the growing nature. Attorneys doing commercial defense work, certainly the plaintiff's work, that's the no-brainer. But the people on the defense side have to understand what's going on in terms of the industry, because it's going to have a dramatic impact on them. And I think as litigation finance grows and has a greater impact, I think it's going to have a ripple effect on the legal industry. I think in 10 years, the legal industry is going to be vastly different than what it is now, primarily because of litigation finance.